I am so fortunate that I have got to do the things that I've done in my career. It's almost like unreal that it's been, but I didn't have it planned. None of this was planned. I didn't have a career path like, oh, I want to, by the time I'm here, I want to be this. And by the time I'm here, I want to be that. I had none of that. I just was present.
Welcome to the podcast, the Signal Awards, called the Most Inspirational Podcast of 2024, Second Act Stories. I'm your host, Scott Merritt.
And I'm Scott's co-host, Andy Levine. Scott, for today's interview, you got to dabble in the film industry, probably for the first time. Tell us about that.
Yeah, how cool is that? The film industry, right? So, in fact, this interview was done inside a room, on a set, on an actual soundstage.
Very, very cool. Tell us about your interviewee, Scott Votaw.
Sure. Scott is the Assistant Vice Chancellor of the University System of Georgia. Now, what does that mean? In short, it means he's the guy that runs the Georgia Film Academy. So he's an educator now, but he actually spent 25 years building an incredible career in the film industry before making this surprising move.
Well, I like this background already. So let's hear Scott Votaw's second act story.
So you're running a program right now that prepares people to work in the film industry.
That is the whole goal of the Georgia Film Academy, is prepare students for meaningful work and employment once they get out of college or technical college.
Let's rewind all the way back to the beginning of your career.
I was not a great student when I went to school. I struggled in high school, but finally, I had a lot of professors that didn't give up on me. I matured a little bit later and started getting it. I graduated with a degree in music, and I did musical theater. That was my goal. I did that for about 6 years and toured around, worked for Opryland Productions and Carnival Cruise Lines and, all the different theater groups that are around the southeastern United States. And I did that for a while, and that was a lot of fun, but realized that's not like a long-term career.
Right.
So at that point, I'd always enjoyed film, and I wanted to know more about it. So I just packed my car. I grew up here in Georgia, by the way. So I went out to California, I packed my car, went out there, and I worked 25 years in film and television. I got into the film industry, but that was not anything I went to college for.
Was there a plan? Like you said, okay, I'm doing this musical theater thing right now, and this is fun, and I'm making some money. But then, like one day, you just decided, that's it, no more of that. I'm putting all my stuff in the car and heading west, right? What drove that, and what was the mission?
Boy, can I say I had a mission? I read a book called What Color Is Your Parachute? And it was a book that was mandatory reading for a lot of business students. And so I read this book and I was like, this is amazing. It helps you figure out what you're good at, what your passion is, and evaluate that, and then look at careers. And so it goes through these whole series of steps. You have to write essays, you have to interview people. And I just went through this whole book. And at the end, it was very clear that I would really be good in working in film and television production.
Did you have a sense of the kind of film industry role you wanted or what you might be interested in?
I had nothing. I had absolutely nothing. I just kind of threw caution to the wind and went and tried and jumped in. I did some things I didn't like. I did a lot of commercial work, and I was sweeping stages at Raleigh Studios and, getting people coffee and running errands. And little by little, I started realizing what I was good at theater, which was theater management and behind the scenes, I was also really good at in film. So I kind of, people started identifying that, and I would get hired to do those kind of behind the scenes organizational things.
How did you network your way into a job when you first arrived? Because you're from out of town, just as almost everybody who works in the film industry probably is and still is.
Yeah.
But you're from out of town. You don't have any connections. And right. I'm guessing that when you were getting started in your career, the film industry wasn't any easier to break into than it is today.
No. So at that time, didn't have the internet. So I had to read the trades and some of the local magazines and different things and find out where are the productions. And I lucked out on they were looking for runners, guys that just ran errands at a film fair in Los Angeles. And that was a commercial production house that did a lot of stuff for Ford, and we did all the Taco Bell commercials, and it was a lot of commercial production. And I just went and cold called. I walked in the door. It's really kind of funny because I walked in, I had my portfolio from college and a lot of the work I'd done. And I was in there and I was talking to him, and I really was not at all qualified. So they didn't give me a job. But I kept pinging back and I kept checking back, and, and about 4 months later, I get a phone call and it says, "Hey, you still looking for a job?" And I went, "Yeah." He says, "All right, be here tomorrow morning, 8:00. So I get there, and all I'm doing is running errands. So here's a piece of paper. Get this, move this from here, move it to there, and track your mileage. And I'd get paid mileage. And I wasn't getting paid a lot, but I wanted something. It was fun.
Right.
And then I got to be on set. And I'll tell this story short because it's a kind of a shaggy dog story. But my first day on set, I get promoted to second AD. I know.
Okay. How does that happen?
Because I paid attention. I did exactly what I was told. And I took some steps that saved the production about an hour worth of shoot time. We were on a big yacht out in LA Harbor, and we were shooting an iced tea commercial. And I did a couple of things that ended up saving the company money and saving time. And so I was recognized that by the director and assistant director and the producer. And so I worked with them after that day for like the next 6 months, every time they did a commercial. And that was a great connecting point. I wasn't sitting there talking to my buddies, drinking a Coke, smoking a cigarette, waiting for somebody to call me on the radio. I was engaged.
So you wind up working with this same crew for 6 months. And so we have to maybe boil down for our listeners how these kinds of jobs work.
Yeah.
Right. You're not necessarily ever a full-time employee of anybody.
Rarely have I ever been a full-time. I've had a few jobs, but mostly this contract labor. And on commercials, it's really quick. You're working 2, 3, 5, 6 days maybe, and then you're on to the next. And it's all about your reputation, who you know, how good of a job you did on your last show. If you're in episodic television, it could last 6 months if you get on a show. If you're on a feature film, it could be anywhere from a month or two to 6 months to a year if it's a really big show. But you are contract labor. You don't have a job. When you do a show for Disney, you don't work for Disney. You work for the production company that's producing the show that will be owned and aired on Disney.
So essentially everybody who works in this industry is constantly chasing the next paycheck.
Absolutely. It's all about networking, and you're like looking at your next job while you're doing your job. And that's part of it. It's reputation, it's work ethic, it's getting recognized that you hustle, you do a good job, you get there early, you stay late. I always tell the students at the GFA, if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late, and if you're late, you're fired.
I mean, it's a harsh reality, but yeah, that's how it has to be, right?
Because it's a business. It's a business. Whatever you're creating, we just happen to be creating entertainment, something that's really fun. But it's a widget. You just make something that somebody else pays money to consume,
right?
Or they monetize it through commercialization. At the end of the day, it's about making money, and the companies that do it have to be successful monetarily to be successful, from a creative standpoint.
So let's go back to you getting promoted from essentially runner to second AD.
Yeah.
On one of the first jobs that you ever had in the industry. Yep. Did your next role come easier, or were you still at that same level?
I stayed in that level, did some coordinating, did a little bit of work in commercials, and then I got a chance to work on Power Rangers for the directorial team for Power Rangers for first season for Saban Entertainment. That was a pretty big catapult for me because just the notoriety, that show was huge. I mean, huge, huge, huge. That was fun. I enjoyed working on that show. And then, I just kept building from there.
Scott's career was going great. He even worked with some pretty recognizable names before launching what would become his own company.
And I got to work with George Lucas and Ben Burtt on Indiana Jones Chronicles, the TV show.
Wow.
I just got some great opportunities throughout my career. And then I moved into more the corporate side. So I had a job. I was vice president of production and development for Classic Entertainment for 7 years. And then I had my own company. We did motion capture, computer animation, and I had a recording studio. So I recorded about 40 albums and did post-production and all kinds of stuff for, direct-to-video at the time was big, VHS and DVD.
Right.
A lot of direct-to-video, things that were just created for direct-to-video. Kind of like a lot of stuff's just created for streaming now. And that was a great business, and I enjoyed doing it, but it all it just stacked on top of each other, and I couldn't even say that was my goal.
So you mentioned that you worked for George Lucas. I got to ask because this is George Lucas is my jam, right? Like I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and I was all Star Wars and all Lucasfilm. How much time did you spend at Skywalker Ranch?
No, we were on location, and I'm trying to remember. I think we were shooting in Joshua Tree National Monument out in the desert, a couple of places out in the desert. We were doing a lot of, I think, some stuff up outside San Francisco. But we were shooting exterior sequences, and there was a unit in the U.S. in California shooting, and there was a unit in Europe shooting. So they were in Morocco, and we were in California, and we were shooting parts of things. But it was cool because I don't know if you know, Ben Burtt was directing the unit that we were working on in California. Ben Burtt was the audio designer for all the Star Wars stuff. So he created all the cool sounds that were in the Star Wars movies.
Oh,
I mean,
cool.
just fascinating. And just talking to him I was really geeky about all that.
But it was an experience.
It was
right?
great.
That you got to participate in that.
I am so fortunate, Scott. I am so fortunate that I have got to do the things that I've done in my career. It's almost like unreal that it's been, but I didn't have it planned. None of this was planned. I didn't have a career path. Like, I want to, by the time I'm here, I want to be this. And by the time I'm here, I want to be that. I had none of that. I just was present.
A series of other jobs carried Scott through a successful, if unplanned, career. And then came his moment of reckoning.
I did some work for Fox My Network and some series stuff they were doing. And that was a lot of fun. But then I started going like, okay, 25 years, I want to do something different. So my dad had been quite ill for a few years, and I decided I'm going to go back to Georgia and just spend a little time with him because I hadn't seen him much in the time I'd been in California. And the whole industry came back because of the tax incentive and started coming to Georgia. And I really didn't want to go back in and start producing and doing all that kind of work again. So, but I had opportunities to get into training, and that's how I got, start putting together the stuff that has now become the Georgia Film Academy.
Did you realize at the time that you had the right amount of experience to be able to impart that on others?
No. I just had a passion to want to do it. I've realized over the years that, it's almost everything in my life has prepared me for the next thing.
How did you make the connections that led to educating others? So
the first one was my father was good friends with the superintendent of schools in that area where they live and said, they want to build a new theater. You should go talk to him. I want you to. So they hooked us up and we chatted. And my theater background and, lighting and organizational, I volunteered to help look at the plans and work with the architects for the school district to build this 1,200 seat performance venue for the school district. And I walked into the first day and I'm like, well, this is horrible. This whole design was terrible. Ended up, I was right. And so we redesigned it all. Then they offered me a job where I helped supervise the construction and the start of this thing. So I went, yeah, okay. So I did that.
So now you're a construction supervisor.
Project manager, right? Okay. I'm not, I can read a blueprint, but that's other than that. But I'm good at project management, just like I did in the film industry. It's no different. It's just like different widgets maybe. And I did that, and then I started doing some work at my alma mater high school. They got a school improvement grant, and the superintendent of that school district went to high school with me. And so we reconnected after all those years. And he said, why don't you come and help us, do something at the high school? And I went, well, okay, giving back, that's kind of cool. It definitely wasn't money, but it was just a chance and working with students was amazing. I got fired up again over film and production because I'm teaching these young kids stuff they had no idea how it worked. So I got in there and did that, and then the technical college reached out to me and said, we'd like to build a film program, and you've done amazing work here, and you come really highly recommended. So they hired me, and I started the technical college version of this, did that for 3 years, and then got brought by the Board of Regents, the University System of Georgia, to help build the Georgia Film Academy.
So it was kind of a step by step growth into, local schools,
right,
building a theater, into creating a educational curriculum, if you will, for high school students, and that kind of just set you into that direction.
That was it. Had never done it before, had never experienced. Went back, had to learn all about how to do that. So I had to take night classes, learning how do you write curriculum and how do you teach and all of that.
So how does the relationship with the technical college system of Georgia happen?
Well, the president of the college knew the superintendent of schools, and they had been talking, and I had chance to meet him at several times. And then he wanted to know what he wants to get involved in film because, things were happening at that point. Films are coming to Georgia. There's excitement. And really, Georgia didn't have a workforce initiative at that time. So we're talking 14 years ago? And it was just starting. And there was, everybody was saying we need more workers. But there was no programs in place to train them.
Georgia is well recognized as a state that is bullish on building business here,
right?
And they see that that the Hollywood production film industry, creative industry, is willing to go where it makes sense to go,
right?
And so Georgia says, "Okay, let's go after that," and they put in place these incentives and all these programs, and they have an office that's run by the Department of Economic Development, and then the business starts coming. Production starts showing up. And now Georgia gets smart about saying, okay, how do we make this a long-term play? How do we play the long game to ensure that this stays here?
Right. I believe Nathan Deal did a study with Georgia State in determining that we didn't have the right training in place for these jobs that were coming to Georgia. And that was the catalyst, I think, for them getting together to create the Georgia Film Academy. So the Georgia Film Academy is a collaboration with the university system and its 26 universities, the technical colleges of the state of Georgia, and its 22 technical colleges in its areas all around the state, to build curriculum that actually got students ready for ready for the workforce. And to bridge the gap between the theoretical teaching and the hands-on application that they need to know when they walk in the door for a job.
How competitive is it to get into the Georgia Film Academy?
It's pretty easy to get in the entry side of it, to get in the classes and start. It's competitive out there. So as we grow, it becomes more competitive. Like if you take just the entry-level class, right? We can just about fit most people in Georgia that would like to take that class. But then you got to have a certain proficiency level to take electric and lighting or grip and rigging or set construction or scenic design or post-production, either picture or audio, or we have streaming, live media, esports. We have all of these different pathways that lead to employment in our industry. And the further up you get, the more competitive it gets. And then when you're at the very top, which means you get a chance to have an internship and possibly work on a Marvel movie or work with NBC Universal, work with one of these shows that are here in town on an internship, it's highly competitive because the industry wants the best of the best.
So how important is it that there is this kind of very vibrant studio landscape here around Atlanta and in Georgia? We have originally Pinewood, now Trilith Studios, right? We're sitting in a studio. It's for the Georgia Film Academy, but there are studios adjacent.
Yeah.
There are other studios all around town. Tyler Perry is here. I mean, there's production companies all over the place. How important is that to the success of the Georgia Film Academy?
Well, to the success of the industry here, vitally important, because infrastructure is a big part of what the film industry, whether it's California, New York, Europe, anywhere else, when they bring a movie here, they need infrastructure. So there's infrastructure here. We have sound stages, we have production facilities.
So talk to me about exactly what the Georgia Film Academy does. Like, what are we actually training people to do when they go through the program to completion?
So you hear a lot about above the line, below the line. So below the line, and it's really literally, it's a line across a piece of paper on a budget top sheet. That's where that comes from. So it doesn't mean anything other than, usually the creatives are more above the lines. Your writers, your directors, your actors, all that sits above the line. And that's just that creative part. And then the below the line is the production services, everything from transportation to lumber to all the pieces that go into making a movie are in that area.
Well, that's a really disappointing definition of below the line and above the line.
Well, see, you can't make a movie without all the below-the-line crafts. There's a craft and a business that has to operate, and it all works together. It's not saying that creative is not important, but you can have the best creative in the world and a crappy execution model and a business plan, and you're not going to make any money. Right. So it has to have both elements working together, and we're trying to really bridge the gap between the theoretical side and the hands-on application side that really makes you ready to go to work in this industry, and then you have your chance to work your way up, just like I did, and let your career evolve into what it's going to evolve into.
So then the people who you're training are primarily the below-the-line people, the people whose names get listed in the credits.
Yeah.
That, you see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of names on these productions, and it's all those people.
Yeah, and they're come through. All making $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 a year. These are good jobs. You know what I mean? And people forget that, you just need a workforce. Not everybody's going to be the director. Not everybody can be the lead actor. But if you want to work in this business, there's a job for you.
I just want to make it clear to anybody who's listening that the Georgia Film Academy is actually a public institution. It's not a private school.
We're part of the university system of Georgia. We are an academic unit. We're not a school. So we're an academic unit, and technical colleges and our colleges and universities send students to us. We do the training, and then they go back to their home institution to get credit and finish their degree programs. Right. And then they go out into the workforce.
So there are a few different ways to characterize what your second act is, right? Because you're kind of still, in one respect, you're still sort of working in the film industry, right? But in another respect, you probably have the first full-time job of your career. Yeah.
I think it's my second, but yeah, exactly. Exactly. When you run your own company, it's not really a full-time job. But yeah, no, really, I didn't have any full-time
like you're
jobs.
A salary employee now.
Right.
Right. Which is new to you.
Newer.
So how did that transition impact you? Like, what was there a level of, like, oh, thank God, now I know how much is going to be in the bank next Friday, or is it how it's different? So how is it different?
It takes a little of the pressure off, maybe, that you got to go find a new gig every few months, which when I was younger, I didn't care about that. But, as you start getting older, I'm in my 60s, it's not like I'm in my 20s. I'm preparing the next generation to do this job for their career. It's a little bit different. I enjoy it.
So what advice would you give to somebody who wants to break into the film industry as a career, maybe doesn't have access to the Georgia Film Academy, right? Because they
Yeah.
live 1,000 miles away. But how would they go about breaking into this industry?
What you need to understand what the industry is. I think most kids coming out of school right now think, well, I want to be a writer, a director, or an actor. And that's like a small, like 1% of the work that goes into this industry. You need to find out where the jobs are. You need to educate yourself. I mean, we live in the age where everything's on your phone. There's so many opportunities you can learn things. But learn the crafts that are out there. Find something that you like within yourself. Let's say you're really good with your hands and you like to build things, right? Well, there's jobs in the film industry. If you're really smart and you know money and you're accounting, and that's kind of like, you love numbers. Well, there's jobs in the film industry for that. So identifying what you like and where you are, and then just looking at what the options are and finding that path, and then don't give up.
Scott, thank you for a great interview with Scott. 2 Scotts for the price of 1 today. This, as I listened to this interview, it sounded like the clear sort of headline of this was a doer becomes a teacher, or an educator in this case. Do I have that headline right, you think?
I think you're pretty spot on there. Yeah, Scott spent 25 years working in the film industry on actual productions. He worked with George Lucas. I mean, for crying out loud, it doesn't get bigger than that. So he did it all, and now he's imparting all that wisdom that he built over all those years onto the next generation of filmmakers.
One of the takeaways I heard, and this may be unique to the film industry, but I think it probably works across all industries, is really the importance of networking in his career and how that really allowed him to make it in the film industry. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, anybody who's followed me on LinkedIn for more than 5 minutes has seen how passionate I am about networking. Networking is absolutely the key to success in careers, in business, virtually in everything, right? It is the only way things happen and get done. And if you are looking for your next job, or you're looking for just growing opportunities, or if you want to make a career shift like so many of the people that we've featured on this show have done, networking is the absolute key to making that happen.
All right, great point. Final question. He was in the film industry for 25 years. He now has been doing this for a number of years. Do you think he's enjoying his new life in education and teaching people about the film industry as much as he enjoyed doing it?
It sounded pretty clear to me in my conversation with him that he had all this incredible knowledge and wisdom that he's built over all these years. And one of the things that brings him the most joy now is being able to impart that wisdom on people who want to learn about it and grow into the industry that he loves so much.
Okay. Well, it sounds like he has a new purpose in life, and that's fantastic. Why don't you tell us a little more about where those who are interested in more of the Georgia Film Academy, where they can go?
Sure. If you want to learn more about Scott's work with the Georgia Film Academy, you can visit their website at georgiafilmacademy.edu.
We hope you'll keep listening and subscribe to Second Act Stories on your favorite podcast app. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Substack. We are everywhere. And the best way to help us is to share us with your friends. That's how we grow.
Don't go away. There are more Second Act Stories just around the corner.